Hello, welcome to the Dissident Mama podcast. Today, my guest is Ryan Randall, also known as Electric Dinosaur. Randall is the writer and artist behind the Southern Without Apology comic book Rebel Yell, as well as Gun on the Chickahominy, a casual pixel target game set during the war between the states, which is due out on May 21st, I believe. We'll find out some about that. This young and creative Southern son has already felt the burn of internet censorship. So let's find out why some crowdfunding platforms and YouTube have their panties in such a progressive wad over his content and see what keeps Randall keeping on and what often seems like such fruitless battles that are also never ending. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, man. Pleasure to be here.
Well, good. Let's dive right in. So this kind of happens to me a lot on the podcast. We're friends online. We're friends, communicating through email, but I finally get to meet you and chat with you. Let's just dive straight in. How did you get into comics?
Comics has been a kind of a lifelong thing for me. Growing up as a child, we had comic books. We had lots of comic books. We didn't spend too much time in front of TV. We'd read, and for a kid, what does he gravitate to more than comics? I mean, they're visually appealing, they're fun. Superhero comics especially, a lot of the old Marvel comics, old DC comics. Never really got into the new stuff, thankfully. I think it would have probably been bad had we done so. Comics started to go downhill really in the late 80s. Well, earlier than that, but we had a lot of access to Golden Age comics and stuff like Tintin too. Classic comics. So it's been, it was a natural progression, natural interest. As a kid, of course, you want to imitate what you see. We saw comics, so we started making, myself and family and friends and all, making our own superheroes and stuff. So, and, you start drawing, you start writing, come up with characters, their own little universes, dramas within them. It's a lot of fun. And I think for a kid, it's really healthy, They need to exercise the imagination rather than just have things pumped into them. They should be able to put out a little. I think it's instructive in its own way. That's how I started.
Keep going. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's how I started. And that's how I started getting into comics.
I like how you said exercise the imagination, because that's one thing I like about comic books. My husband, we've been to a couple of like local Comic Cons. There was a place in town where they had free comic book day every year.
Oh yeah.
My kids would dress up, that kind of thing. We got a few sketches. I have somebody above my desk there. Oh, I should know his name. I don't know. I'm not a comic book person. But anyway, we have a few sketches around the house of the artists that were there and drew things. But the current state of comics from just a non-comic person seems to be pretty sad. And then I heard Eric July on the Tom Woods podcast recently just talking about how both DC and Marvel have, gone all woke. And I mean, would you say that that's what's happening with those? I mean, those are the two big ones, right? The biggest ones. And then there may be just a few alternatives.
Yeah, there's the two big ones, Marvel and DC. They've actually been pretty progressive for quite a while. It's just now they're starting to get into more even woker politics than they had been. But even in the late 60s, you started to see where they were sort of pushing the envelope. And even Stan Lee, he said that he thought it was a good thing for comic writers to be pushing the envelope. So and of course, he's one of the greats of the comic book industry, saying that comics are there to, shatter sacred cows. But so it's been going on for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you think he, I would guess his politics are left, but do you think he just meant in general anything? And is it just because we used to be kind of sort of, I don't know, traditional-ish that he meant that? Or was he just thinking that that's what comic books could do? Maybe left sacred cows and right sacred cows. I mean, what do you know about him? And because I know like every Marvel movie I've ever seen, like he's in it, he does his little cameo. Yeah. So he's very influential. Do you
True.
think, like, if he was still alive today, he would maybe be like, "Hey, LGBT is super fashionable. Maybe we should be pushing against that," or is it just was it a left wing kind of cause from the beginning?
I don't know. That's a very good question. Somebody who could probably answer that would be John De La Rose, who he he's kind of is, in my opinion, the new Stan Lee because he's so versatile in comics writing. He's also, a conservative fella. I don't know if you know of any of his work, but he is a huge Stan Lee fan. So
You
he would
linked him
probably
on
be,
your website, right?
yes, ma'am. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, that's my first intro to him today when I was researching you. Yeah, I checked out his stuff.
Yeah,
So,
he's not a Southerner. I think he's Californian, but
mhm.
but he's sympathetic. Yeah, he's a great guy. I've talked to him before. He's super nice. But yeah, as far as Stanley personally, I don't know. He died, I think it was a few years back. So he was living up until this new progressive age.
Yeah,
I hadn't heard him comment on things, so that reflects favorably on him. But
right.
again, I could have mixed up because just to remain silent today is a plus when you're talking about creators and so
Yeah.
forth. But as far as the comics go, Marvel, DC, in the '60s, they started to move away from the fun, happy, let's just write goofy stories. They started to, address drugs, crime, poverty issues, which are good to address. But in my opinion, they took comics into a bad direction. They took them into a much more serious direction, which didn't need to be done at the time. Um, and there are certainly progressive currents throughout them. Now, of course, today, I would hope that no writer who had lived during that time would endorse, transgenderism or so forth as a cause. That seems so far removed. But who knows? I don't. So,
Yeah, it's
but
interesting.
there's certainly vain.
Yeah, my kids again, my husband grew up on Marvel stuff. I- he would go into the local comic book store and they would know his name, this kind of
Uh,
thing. So I was standing on the edge, uh, I knew the basics, Superman, Spider-Man, whatever. I knew that, but from what, I've gathered by, of course, the franchise of the movies, like everything's a superhero movie now. And of course, Star Wars, everything has to be so female centric and, it's boring, I mean, I just find it so boring. And I would think that comic book readers, because, these stories were constantly changing, but they still kind of had a core, I would think that most comic book readers would find it frustrating. Is that how you felt it and why you decided to create an alternative?
well, yeah. I think comics, they definitely lost something, especially modern comics. I mean, a lot of that's, yeah, rooted in the new directions the comics went starting in the '60s, but also, with the Watchmen and all, made comics a lot grittier. Where's I going with that? Yeah, as far as what got me into comics, or like actively producing comics, at least Rebel Yell, it was the Charleston. What was that Charleston church shooting? One in
AME, yeah.
2000 AME. Yeah, it was, and the response of people to that I thought was just disgusting. It was a tragedy, should be condemned, but you don't attack symbols or people who had absolutely nothing to do with it. The gentleman who was responsible for the attack should have been condemned. He should have been tried. But they shouldn't have taken that out on the South as a whole, specifically the Confederate flag. And then Nikki Haley and her, a weak-kneed response and capitulation was just disgusting. So I thought, well, somebody has to, put something out there to, to show the South in a positive light. So, and I love comics. So, hey, comics seems to be the perfect opportunity. What was that was a good question. Would you repeat the question? I think I
I
missed
don't
something.
remember, but the way my interviews go, we'll probably get back to it. Well, let me ask you about this. Before the whole Charleston shooting, I mean, what was it, 2015, 16? It seems like 1,000 years ago, but it also feels like yesterday. Were you kind of just, hey, I'm a Southern guy and it's all good, just it wasn't, I don't want to say not a focus because, I assume you're like me. It's like, it's part of your identity, but actually that Charleston shooting helped me kind of come back to my identity. I'd gotten away for a long time because I was a leftist, and that's a whole nother thing. But was
Oh,
that
wow.
something that it made you kind of tap back into it? Like, okay, it's kind of a thing and I don't need to think about it, but now I'm on the defensive. Now it's under attack. Or were you always kind of progressing toward being Southern without apology, or just being it, not even progressing toward it? Or are you just that person? Because I was not for a long time.
Uh, I would say, I was probably more than most people actively identifying with the South and defending against it, or defending it, not defending against it, but defending it. I was a member of the SCV as a child, and lots of family in the SCV and so forth. So a lot of the issues presented in 2015 weren't new to anybody who was sort of in those circles. So, no, to me, it was just like, when it happened, it's like, number one, this is a tragedy. What an idiot to have done this.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, it was, what's going to come now?
Right.
Just like 2020, it was absolutely ludicrous. But so, but you see, that's the problem. We're constantly being forced into negatives when we should be presenting it the South and the Southern tradition and so forth. The South's symbols is positives, which is the whole point of the comic. It's something that's good. It's something that's respectable, and it's something that people shouldn't cower from, at least if they're well-meaning. Which the Southerners need to reclaim, and not enough people are doing this. If we just had, one show like the Dukes of Hazzard to prominently display a Confederate flag, in the mainstream media, how that would do 10 billion times more than everything the SCV is doing now. And I love the Abbeville Institute, but that would probably do more than the Abbeville Institute is doing as well, despite all the wonderful work. Because academic works only appeal to a small select people who already, have that intention. They want to learn, they want to discover. Whereas the average person is just going to sit down and, in front of the TV and just soak up whatever is presented to them. Same with comics.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question. We were mutual friends with Louis Lieberman, who that was his pen name. He was our friend. He is our friend, and our Southern compatriot, Matthew Silber. He passed away in February 2019. He was the artist, the brainchild behind Libertopia, and he did that work with his wife, Dawn. He just allowed me to use all of his images anytime I had an essay where I felt like they could fit. But he was a big proponent of using eye-catching art with quick biting rhetoric to bust like the false narratives and reveal true history. I mean, he was very unapologetically Southern without apology. And, he wasn't looking to get rich. He knew he wasn't going to get rich from it, but he knew it was important work. Is that how you feel? I mean, you've already kind of spoken to it, but I mean, the battle flag, just that in itself, forget Lee, forget the war, just the battle flag is so toxic. Like I read a story today about how a woman in New York had a battle flag on a rock in her garden, and now the CPS wants to take her kids away. I mean,
I read that. And
it's not funny.
In the northern.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's in the northern state, but they'll do the same thing here. They will. The bureaucrats in the state governments will do the exact same thing here, given the opportunity.
Oh, yeah. But is it just you feel a calling because it needs to be said and you don't, come hell or high water, you're just going to do it? That's, I mean, kind of how I am.
Yeah, it's, and, I'm in nobody, of course, wants to have their lives ruined.
Right.
But at the same time, you want to put forward as much effort you can, given your state in life. And I feel like this is what we can do. And so, we're doing Rebel Yell, and those are continuing. We have a dozen issues, the writings drafted, and we're continuing to work on production. We're on number 4 now, which is getting finalized, and then number 5 will begin. It's been slower than I wanted, but other things intervene. And then we started to try and branch out with little, we tested this out, basically a little video game is what we're trying to do now, because ultimately, we're trying to, number one, have good things So fun things people can enjoy, because what's the point of doing it if nobody enjoys it? But number two, occupy space. You got to get out there. People hid the Confederate flag for so long, and then they're surprised when people are, find it offensive or whatnot. No,
Yeah.
Fly it proudly.
Yeah.
Be proud. Yeah, in an age where pride is so prevalent, why do Southerners not have pride in themselves, their ancestors, or their symbols? It's just staggering.
It's interesting too. I find that even among, I guess we got to use terms, based people, conservatives, traditionalists, I kind of have my toe in a lot of different things, but I would say the general tenor of the people I hang out with or, talk with online or give money to or listen to or whatever, they would be in that definition. But some of them, they're so smart on so many things, but to them even southernness is toxic and they don't poo-poo it. They don't go around, saying they want to take down Lee statues, but they also are very careful to maybe, I don't know, not build bridges with Southern without apology people and stuff like that. And, you know, I just don't understand how anybody could live in postmodern America and having lived through 2020. And I get people need to make money. I get we need to survive and we don't want to be killed by Antifa, but I still don't understand why people don't understand you're gonna be called a neo-Confederate, a Nazi, a racist, or whatever if you aren't 100% woke. It's frustrating.
It's going to happen. Yeah, no, it's going to happen. And I'm Catholic, so this is kind of interesting to do, because there are certain people in Catholic circles, who are like, well, the Confederacy was racist, and yada yada yada, and these are Orthodox Catholics and so forth. But they don't realize that those same slurs can be attached to the Catholic Church, which was certainly a colonizing force. And I don't know if these people, well-meaning as they are just trying to sacrifice the South in order to stave off attacks on other institutions. But it's ultimately going to fail, because the South is really the litmus test, I think, for conservatism. And not even conservatism. Conservatism is a very weak term, if you ask me. Ultimately, conservative, nothing. Mm-hmm. So it is a very weak movement. G.K. Chesterton talked about that, how progressives constantly change things, change good things into bad things, and conservatives try to prevent people from changing the bad things to good things.
Yeah.
So he said it better than that. But his point was, which is a very Jeffersonian view, actually, that conservatism by itself isn't a good force. Actually, a restoration or revolution is more beneficial, because it's active, it's positive. It's not just trying to keep the status quo in place, even if the status quo is horrible, which is what the modern day Republican Party is all about, which is why now they're defending transgenderism.
Yeah.
Like the the governor of Arkansas did. Mm-hmm. And then now the whole fiasco in California, which is just a hoot. But
yeah, you're talking about Bruce Jenner, that whole thing.
Yeah, that is. Who would have thought 20 years ago that would?
Dude, he was on Hannity. And granted, Sean Hannity is Sean Hannity. He's a neocon, but he literally was sitting there in a dress talking to Hannity, who called him Caitlyn Jenner. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I'm even shocked by the hellscape we're living in. It was pretty shocking.
Yeah, or the Trump presidency, for all the good things he did, he did not maintain Christian morals concerning homosexuality. Who is it? Is it Greenwald?
Glenn Greenwald, yeah.
Glenn Greenwald, yeah. He's he lost that front. But I've talked with friends about this, who share my views, and they just don't think that there's enough popular support to push back against that issue. But I mean, if you're not going to fight for marriage or the family, then you're not worth.
Yeah. And that goes back to your point of, Catholic people. I'm an Orthodox Christian. I used to be Protestant, of thinking, oh, if we just, throw them this whatever, this bone, we're going to be left alone. But to me, I'm kind of a big picture person. I see this as a fight between good and evil. You would have probably some people that Christians who would say that's toxic traditionalism. That's actually a new thing going around. You're a toxic trad because you believe in good and evil and the family. So that's weird. But the whole point is, I mean, if you go back to Marx, he hated God way more than he hated capitalism. And it goes back before Marx. I mean, let's look at the French Revolution. What were they doing? Tearing down saints and churches and reinventing the freaking calendar. This is all because they were putting man at the center. And it is very frustrating because, I feel like I'm, what's the saying? Beating a dead horse or whatever. If you don't understand that the South is the stereotype, because the South is representative of Christian culture, whether it's true or not now, that's what they see it as, of tradition, of whiteness. I have no problem with that. I'm a white person and I'm married to a white dude and I have 3 white sons. That's all symbolically. And of course, we're overwhelmingly quote unquote conservative. So that would be my thing to, your Catholic friends and my Orthodox friends. Like, if you don't defend us, you're next, dude. Like, they're coming for you. So that's
which I mean, to be clear, my friends feel the same way, but they just, looking out across the general population, it's like, well, there's no fight left in anybody. But no, it's and if you lose on that issue, what is it going to result in? It's going to result in a society worse than the one we have now, if it can be conceived.
Yes. All right, well, let's get into your comic books. I want to talk about each one just a little bit, and then we'll go down some other rabbit holes. So here's just a quick review I found on Goodreads. I won't read the whole thing, but I really liked what this person said. Not everyone loves a hero. This is issue number 1, by the way. Not everyone loves a hero. Amen to that. A man can do good his whole life and is still to be despised by those around him, such as the case of Rebel Yell, the hated hero. He's a man who continually struggles in what appears to be the fruitless fights, all for a city nearly beyond hope, a slum swamped by crime and corruption. He rises from the rubble with a rebel yell and attempts in underdog fashion to fight for the right of a lost cause. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit more about number 1. Who is this anti-hero hero, and what is it about the 80s that we need to know about issue number 1?
Okay, number 1 was a hoot. It was so much fun to write and plan and everything. It's as we discussed before, coming out of 2015, wanted to put something positive out for the public. And number 1 was, of course, the first foray into that. Probably not the first issue actually written, but certainly the first one which came together in its entirety. And it's motivated or it's sort of propelled along in inspiration by 1980s music. So if you read the issue, which is fun, it's just scattered. One of the characters speaks almost entirely in 1980 song lyrics or song titles. So if you have a discerning ear, you may be able to pick that up, or discerning eye, I guess it'd be. But no, the first issue is, it's this cliche, girl gets kidnapped by bad guy, superhero stepped in to save her. But it's lighthearted fun, which is what it's all supposed to be about, Goofy superhero, beat 'em up style fun. So, I don't know if there's much more to say than that. It's pretty straightforward, honestly.
But wrapped in Southern chivalry, right?
Yeah, no, Rebel Yell is a he is supposed to be a chivalrous character. He's supposed to be high-minded. He's not a brute. He's not going to beat people to a pulp for the sport of it. So
right.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at number 2 then. We have all 3 of these, and number 2 is my kid's favorite, because this is the one where like Antifa gets beaten up. I
You
have
know,
3 boys, so they like that. So this is lawlessness reigns supreme in the public spaces of the South. The New South is taking over and they're burying tradition, symbols, and heroes of the past. Yet, this is the great part, the ancestral traits of rebellion are hard to overcome in present day incarnations. So it's tapping into even sometimes people who don't know they have that rebel yell spirit. Southerners do deep down inside. So tell us a little bit about number 2.
yeah, number two, firstly, everybody in some way roots for the underdog, at least they should. I think my personal opinion, and I think it's verified through history, is that the underdog is the Christian position because Christianity is always in the underdog position.
Yep.
I like J.R. Tolkien said before that he saw history as being one long defeat. So good guys don't always win. And I think that is an important thing today's conservatives, today's Southerners need to understand. Just because you prevail in a conflict or so forth doesn't necessarily mean that you were on the right side. Might does not always make right. And not all, combats are like the medieval archetype. What is that? Where 2 knights would fight, and the one who was the victor was considered to have been in the correct position. But it's not always like that. Good guys often lose.
Yeah.
I would say good guys lose mostly.
Yeah.
But it's not the fact that you lose. It's not the fact that the cause is lost. It is the fact that you tried to do something.
Yeah.
So, when the day of judgment comes, I don't think God is going to be sitting around asking, the Knights Hospitallers who fought at Malta, whether or not they defeated the Turks. He's going to be looking at whether or not they gave all they could the cause. And so that's the second issue. Honestly, it is my least favorite that I have both written and that's been produced. But I think it's the weakest. It is because there's very little plot. A lot of the imagery is good.
Yeah.
But I felt it's a little on the nose. But it was good. It was fun to do, but it seems a little, not as campy as the others.
Yeah. Well, my sons I have twins that are 12 and my oldest son is almost 14. They thought it quote unquote kicked butt. So there you go.
Oh, nice. See, now I should listen to the consumer and should be like, yeah, I'm gonna do more of that now.
Well, let's get to number 3. I actually kind of have this, I don't know, esoteric or whatever critique of it. So this one is about armed robberies rip their way through Vandal City. That's the name of the city, which is awesome. But the only items selected by the bandit are those containing silver. So they're trying to get Confederate silver and stuff like that. So give us a little bit about this, and then I'll tell you what, like if I was writing a dissertation on this, what I thought it was.
It was, this one also had some problems. One thing I would change would definitely be the character design around, I think. Some of the character designs. But no, okay, so this one is basically, it was supposed to be addressing, it's not materialism, kind of materialism, but people who are very utilitarian in how they use objects and so forth. So they I don't know what else to do besides this.
That's what I was going to say. I thought it was a critique on capitalism.
Yeah, a little.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say directly.
Yeah.
But mainly, rather than people giving items value, these other people look at their monetary worth.
Right.
Yada yada.
Like so, the bad. What was the bad person's name? The baddie, as you call it.
I changed the name around, but I think it's Silver Shot because it was Silver Bullet. And then there was already a Silver Bullet, I think, so I changed it to Silver Shot.
It was a girl, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just saw her as a carpetbagger.
Yeah, which that was also something I don't know if I'd do again because Rebel Yell, he's supposed to be chivalrous. He shouldn't be fighting women. But I don't think he I can't remember if he punched her. I don't think he did. But
come on, it's 2021. Embrace it, man.
Well, he did.
Oh goodness.
so what's the critique? I'm interested.
Yeah, it was a critique on capitalism, and I saw her as the carpetbagger, and not capitalism per se. My libertarian listeners will get upset, but not the market. Okay, I believe in the free market to a degree, but the unchecked, unregulated capitalism, like that the agrarians talked about, that it has
Yeah.
to be checked by social mores and tradition and culture and all those things that, not everything can be commodified. So I saw her
Exactly.
as just like money, money, money.
Yeah. And I'd say that's true. And yeah, the capitalism is a touchy subject, and it's getting even touchier. But I would, I would agree. The agrarians, I think, had the correct view of it. The traditional Catholic view on capitalism is not very. It's it's true, of course, but it's not. The modern capitalist defender would probably see it as archaic and
Are you talking about distributism?
distributism. Yes, ma'am. So
Yeah, define that for our listeners if you can. Just like the gist. It doesn't have to be like super academic. Just I only discovered that term like a year ago, and it turns out I was like, well, hell, I'm a distributist. Who knew? So just give us your 101 on it.
okay, well, I have a friend who's actually very much involved in distributism as an idea, and he does a lot of research. He'll probably be able to give a better idea of what it is than I, but it's basically saying that everything that can be done on the most local level should be done on the most local level, my understanding, and that property should be distributed, and not in a communist way, but it should be as decentralized as possible. So you want to maximize the ownership of private property and have as much power on a local level as possible. And that's basically what the agrarians said. It's really a form of localism. And and so we see oppositions to that, especially today in capitalism, which is sort of reflected itself now through Silicon Valley and all the giant corporations, which are basically ruling the government in tandem with these politicians who have socialist dreams. And both parties, it's interesting because both parties seem to be working together to further the same ends, even though they would at first appear to be opposed. But distributism would be a force which would step in and say, no, we need to, crush the giant corporations. We need to, break up these monopolies. And then it would point to the socialists and say, no, we need to have local government. We don't need to have all this centralization that ultimately is, inimical, antithetical to the freedom of and liberty of mankind. So,
well, yeah,
I don't know if that.
No, that did answer it because it's so interesting. You try to boycott somebody today. All right, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and boycott somebody. But, oh, well, I'm going to boycott this potato chip and this soda and this granola bar or whatever. Oh, well, hell, they're all owned by PepsiCo. I mean,
Yep.
you can't even do that. I mean, you can, but it's
Not
really
effectively.
hard. So it's just like the opposite of what we have today. They're not quite monopolies, but they're definitely, I guess, whatever. They literally are, I guess, fascistic, because it's the melding of government and private, and they're all protected, and we're all sitting out here just going, why are my prices rising so much? And they're controlling what we're eating. Yeah. So I actually would love to write an essay on what distributism is. So maybe you can tell me the name of your friend at the end of this interview.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, he would probably be a really fun guy to interview, honestly. He is. I would definitely like to put you in contact with him.
Can you tell me his name now, or is he top secret?
I can't. I mean, he probably honestly wouldn't care, but I wouldn't feel comfortable.
All right, good, because editing stuff out's a pain. So tell me at the end when we're not recording. All right, so the Rebel Yell is such a great alternative for kids, and I think my boys, it really is. They read a little alt hero. My husband has some of that. They read your stuff, and what you do is thankless. So I want to take this opportunity before I forget to say thank you for doing what you do. I know you're not, getting rich off of it, so thank you. But it is vital work. So you also you know, perhaps you're making some profit, but you are also getting a lot of trouble. Tell us a little bit about the internet censorship that you went through in 2019 and what's been happening since then.
Okay, yeah. Well, first we tried to pitch the comic on Freestarter, which was an independent, crowdfunding platform, which was ultimately booted by Stripe, who was the payment processor, who was saying that, oh, well, they're hosting all these alt-right, creators, so we're not going to allow them to process their payments anymore. So it killed the platform. So that was number one. That wasn't really censorship against us, but it was censorship against, something which could have been pretty cool had it gotten off the ground. Number two was, what was it? I forget if we had the first issue on Kickstarter or Indiegogo and got kicked. But anyway, the first issue, I think this is how it went. The first issue was successfully crowdfunded. So no problems, got payment distributed, and everything's golden. People got their comics. We move on to issue 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got kicked off the crowdfunding platform. They said, it violated community services or whatever. Oh, no, sorry. Issue 1 was boycotted from Kickstarter. So we went to Indiegogo, which, has a history of being more friendly to independent creators because, John De La Roz had some on there, I think. Mm. And other people like Cyberfrog, Ethan Van Cyber and all. So, not your normie creators. They had opened themselves up to those comics. So we put issue number 1 on there and it crowdfunded successfully after, Kickstarter kicked us off, which is funny, Kickstarter kicking us off. Well, we put issue number 2 on there after issue number 1 successfully crowdfunded, and we had completed crowdfunding. So we had reached our goal. We were getting ready to, print the comics or whatever, send them out to people, but we hadn't gotten payment yet. And so we were like, well, this is weird. It's been a few weeks. They should have cleared the payment by now. The campaign has ended. And then just like what happened to Kickstarter, issue number 1, they said, you've violated our community standards or whatever, which is ludicrous because issue number 1 went fine. We had no problems, crowdfunded it, everything else. Issue number 2, I don't know if somebody reviewed it and they took issue with him defending himself against Antifa or what. That may have been the problem, but they held up payments. They ultimately refunded everybody who was involved in the campaign. And then they scrubbed the page completely. So I could, it was some difficulty trying to find people's names and addresses, because ultimately I was going to send them the books anyway, regardless of whether or not I got the money. But actually, I was in contact with John De La Roz right after that happened, and he said, you need to save the the contacts and everything because they're going to scrub your page. So, yeah, no, it was he was great guy. So so that happened with issue number 2, and so we were booted from the platform. And we had basically nowhere we could pitch our idea. Patreon is decidedly left wing. Yeah. So there was no hope of getting on there. Thought about some other avenues. Gumroad, I think, is one who hosts independent creators. But I think they're also pretty leftist. I haven't really looked into that. They're pretty progressive. It's just all of these people are now, they're cracking down on what, content you can have on there, but it's only one-sided. So, Indiegogo, you look on Indiegogo, there's, blatant pornography, blatant gore. It's rampant and it sells. And that is somehow acceptable, but you put a guy in a Confederate flag on there and suddenly that is, violating their community standards. It's absolutely ludicrous. We thought about selling directly through eBay and stuff like that, but so now we're just doing it on the vlog through PayPal. But we're wondering whether or not somebody's going to flag PayPal and tell them to boot us, because that's the way it seems to be going right now. And after that, I don't know. I guess we'll do snail mail until the post office starts opening people's letters, which was happening. Actually, I had shipped 3 or 4 comics to a gentleman and they never got there. I think somebody I could see, finally put them on tracking, and I could see where they got to a certain point, and then they just disappeared. So
You don't mail them like in plastic or anything?
no, I mailed
yeah,
them,
but yeah, it's in an envelope. How would they know?
I have no idea. But for some reason, it kept getting stopped at the same place.
That's
So
weird.
yeah, it is weird. So
Huh.
I do not know.
And there's nothing new under the sun. I'm currently reading The Real Lincoln with my boys
Ooh,
by
plastic.
Thomas DiLorenzo, and
Yeah,
the stuff
is awesome.
Lincoln did through the post office. Like, I thought I knew a lot about Abraham Lincoln, but it's shocking the levels of evil he went to. But yes, burned newspapers down, jailed editors, and then people were like, well, we're gonna put it in the mail to people, and he stopped doing that too. Like, literally just wouldn't deliver these people's mail. So I guess you're going through a little of probably what some of your ancestors went through.
Yeah, it's bad, but that's funny. That reminds me of which I didn't know about this. Dr. Brian McClanahan on his podcast, he was talking about how it's very likely that Lincoln participated in election fraud by moving troops to various swing states and having the troops vote in the local elections. I'd never heard of that anywhere. But that's speaking of underhandedness and fraud.
Yeah, that book. So there's something I do for people. I buy them books when kids have birthday parties. I have been buying on occasion some Rebel Yell comic books for kids, and and then now that some of the kids are getting a little older, I usually buy them some of those politically incorrect guidebooks. But I think I'm going to buy everybody The Real Lincoln. I'm just going to buy like a stack of them and give them away for Christmas presents, anniversaries, Mother's Day. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to give those books away. Because,
it's a great one. Yeah. War Crimes Against Southern Civilians is probably another good one. Yeah. No, that's great.
Have you thought, Louis Lieberman, our friend Matthew Silber, did quite a bit of stuff like making fun of Lincoln and Sherman, these like funny memes. Have you thought about incorporating like a real historic person into a comic book?
I have. I've thought about doing, right now we're geared, of course, towards, sort of goofy super stuff, but I've already been drafting some issues regarding some historical figures in the South, which, of course, one of them would be maybe 4 issues surrounding this historic figure. It's going to try and do Admiral Raphael Sims.
But
and then I was planning on doing a sort of like a comic, which is a collection of comics, smaller comics, which would feature, just like great Southerners in history, and it would have like 2 or 3 pages regarding a Southerner. One of them, I think, was General Garnett at Gettysburg. Just captivated me when I was reading about him, and I really wanted to do a story around him. So.
And you had said earlier you have a bunch of these written. What's the deal? You just need to organize it, get the money. How can we help you get more of these to see the light of day?
It's not even money, it's just time, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I would if I could quit my job, which, hey, if I ever got doxxed, that would be the benefit. I'd probably be poor, but at least I have a lot of free time. I devote myself to something like this. It's coming out. It's just slowly. We do what we can in the time that's given to us. But as far as y'all can do, just try and hit me up on social media. Some people were apparently mass reporting me on Twitter. Last week, somebody brought it to my attention because they posted an excerpt from a comic, I believe in the 80s. It was about a superhero talking about how she was lesbian and she wanted to be accepted. Which is funny. I commented, this is kind of cringe. And the original poster, who I wasn't responding to, she started going off, attacking me or whatever. And I was like, well, to each his own or whatever. Yeah, yeah. So then I think she was encouraging all her followers, and she had 2,000 or 3,000 followers to report me and yada yada yada. But
Yeah.
so if we get kicked off of Twitter, then that's that avenue closed. But we're still on Gab, so look us up on
That's right.
Gab, look us up on the blog. We're
All
there.
right.
Don't post to the blog a whole lot, but we do check it. So we're observing, if not engaging. So
Well, I'll be sure to link to that. And I'm not wrapping up the interview quite yet. I have just a couple more
please.
questions, but I wanted to say, I think this is funny. I got kicked off Twitter, but like a warning, I had to, they extorted me or whatever. They said, you must delete this post or else you cannot go on Twitter. And I actually was going to just be like, screw Twitter. I don't care. But my husband's like, you almost have 800 followers, honey. He's like, you got to stay on Twitter. I was like, all right, whatever. But the tweet I had to delete was I was saying that pornographers and salon reporters should be tarred and feathered. And they said I was abusing them. And I'm like, yeah, they're pornographers and salon writers. I absolutely am. But anyway, I had to delete it.
I mean, pornographers are basically a protected class now. But
Amen. They super are. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. You're calling it a lesbian cringe. And, all of a sudden you're like the Antichrist. It's craziness.
yeah. And then what's funny though is she was saying, we should accept we should accept all cultures and so forth. It's just who we are. And, I was like, well, okay. I'm Southern. The Confederate flag is my culture.
Yeah.
Ergo, you should accept it and accept me. And then, hissy fit. But
I love that you did that. That's putting them on the defensive. You stay on the offensive. They have to get on the defensive. That was brilliant. Brilliant optics.
Thank you. They fall by their own standards, though. But the thing is, they don't care. They're not consistent. So it really doesn't matter to them. But that's the best you can do is you can point out their hypocrisy and then run.
And let me talk a little bit more about your internet censorship. Apparently, tell me if this is true, a dude named Salty Cracker, he has almost 700,000 YouTube followers. I mean, this is not a small potatoes guy. He wrote, or I guess not wrote, he did a video on you called Beating the Little Guy. Did you know that's gone?
Really? No, I did not know that's gone.
Well, prove me wrong, or I searched, I could not find it. It's the blog you wrote about it, it's a dead link. So I was like, well, I'll just go to YouTube and search for it. Couldn't find it there on Salty Cracker's channel. And then I just, searched around DuckDuckGo trying to find it. I'm pretty good at researching. I think that puppy's gone.
Dang. I remember watching it when it came out. I was like, man, that was at the time the biggest exposure we got. Hands down. Salty Cracker saying, this is stupid. How dare they do this to this guy? Go support him, whatever. Yeah. No, that's a shame. I'll have to try and see if you can't find it, I probably won't be able to find it. I hope he didn't pull it. That would have been sad, but
I'm assuming I watched a little of Salty Cracker stuff. He doesn't seem like the type of guy who would pull it. They probably just said it's gone.
Yep. Dang.
That's what happened to a vaccine lady. I don't want to call her anti-vax because that sounds stupid. She's a pro-science lady. Anyway, they just sent me an email and they said, oh, we removed this video. Have a nice day. I was like, okay, all right. So my guess is that's what happened to good old Salty Cracker.
Well, they did with another group that was, questioning these vaccinations. They had all these files in Google Files, and then Google went in and deleted them. And they weren't public, my understanding. They were just files you could access through a link provided to you.
Wow.
But Google took it upon themselves to delete all that content in somebody's private Google file. So it's crazy. That's a perfect example of, this media corptocracy that we're currently imprisoned within.
And on one hand, excuse me, my Mother's Day beer got me a little loopy. On one hand,
must have been a good beer.
It was delicious. On
what
one
type?
hand,
Sorry,
I'm sorry, Lagunitas.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's pretty good. What was my thought?
Got a Miller High Life.
uh, on one hand, this is all frustrating what we dissidents have to go through. But on the other hand, why would they work so hard to malign and silence and castigate and blah, 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 all those words? Why would they bother if we weren't striking at something? And I'm not saying we're moving mountains here by any means, but that we are slowly like chipping away at the veneer of their insanity and stupidity. I mean, do you ever think that, sometimes I have to tell myself that because otherwise it's super depressing, but that why would they care so much about us if we weren't doing something important?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I think ultimately, I think they're power hungry. And even if, for instance, on your blog, your podcast, if you were to convince one person that, the South is good or so forth, just to take that issue or something else, the merits of the Orthodox Church or something, they would try and crush you because, like Satan, they want every soul within their grasp, and even losing one would infuriate them to no end. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't understand it, but that's the only thing I can say regarding Rebel Yell, is because we were a nobody. We were a tiny little, hardly doing anything. Maybe it could have grown into something bigger, but no outreach, no very little audience, and yet they come down hard and crush us when there are so many other things that should take priority.
Oh yeah.
And another thing, going back to occupying space, I don't think they want that space occupied. 2020 showed that they don't care whether you're a monument in a graveyard that hardly anybody looks at. They want to destroy it.
Yeah.
They want to wipe it off the map. So yeah, I would say that's the case. Number one, they power and hatred. They want power over people, and number two, they absolutely despise the South and what it stands for. But and even if we don't have any followers, if nobody purchased any comics, I would still make them because I enjoy it.
Me too. I wish I made $1 million a month, but
Yeah,
I
that'd be
don't.
nice.
Not, everyone was totally thinking that, but yeah. But one of my favorite things about doing what I do, I love writing. I'm not the greatest verbal person, but I love talking to people. I was a newspaper reporter, so I like talking to people. But it is meeting you. I know that we're talking through a screen, but we may meet one day. And this has given me the opportunity to meet compatriots. I mean, I'm talking people who would not throw me under the bus no matter what name they called me. And I may not have a lot of friends, but the friends I have are hardcore. And that's important now too, because not feeling alone, we both live in this insane world and we have to go to the grocery store, and sometimes, you go to a restaurant with the horrible TVs on and whatever. We get how we are not fashionable at all. But
Yeah.
meeting a person like you makes it worthwhile because we are out there. We're teeny weeny tiny minority of a minority, but I like knowing that I'm not, alone in the desert, whatever, spitting into the wind.
Yeah, no, and the amount of integrity and talent that the people within these circles has is truly staggering. You talked about Mr. Silber before, Lewis Lieberman, a great man, but what a fantastic cartoonist.
Yeah.
The guy, he was truly good at his craft. And you were talking about before, he could have done other things. He could have, if he had given up the whole Southern angle, then he probably could have, reached, at least materially speaking, much higher heights than he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like he had a full and happy life and doing what he loved. And the work he left us is brilliant. It's a shame that we don't have more of it, but yeah, it's still funny. His ABC's Leftism for Kids. I crack that open all the time and read it because it's just funny. The guy had a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
Which who was it? Maybe it was you. Maybe it was you said that. One of the reviewers said, that people can't stand being laughed at. The left, They can't stand being mocked. The modern progressives, modern neocons, all of them, which is, like the Capitol fiasco. I think that's the biggest deal. It's not about, overthrowing the U.S. government. It's that these people made fun of the government, and they do not like that. They do not like to be mocked. They do not like to be the butt of the joke. Some some Buffalo man standing up in the rotunda, or some guy putting his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk. Yeah, to them, to be laughed at is worse than probably to be refuted in an argument, honestly.
Yeah.
And he did it so perfect. Man, his
Yeah.
comments are so good.
Yeah, and when I met him once in person at a secession conference with him and his wife and his son, and we were having these conversations that we're having now, and I asked him why he did it, and he said, well, a lot of reasons, but one was for his son. And the times I've wanted to give up on Dissident Mama, which has been a lot, because I'm just like, it's so time consuming and nobody's listening, and I just get down. And my husband will remind me, this isn't about the money, honey. It's about talking truth, and this is your gift to your sons. And that's basically what he said. He wanted it to be a gift to his son. He was doing it for him. Do you mind me asking you if you have children?
Sadly not. I would like to, but at this present time, no. No, I'm not married.
Well, just imagine if you have kids, you'll be getting censored all over the place because you'll even ramp it up a notch. Get the Papa Bear going. Well, let's move on to your video game. Tell us very quickly about that, and then we'll wrap it up. It is called Gun on the Chickahominy. Give us the gist about that. What's a casual pixel target game? I mean, it's literally like pixelated, like Minecraft or something.
Yeah. Minecraft is like a 3D game. This would be 2D. So, something you would find on a Super Nintendo or something like that. So it's got retro pixel graphics. And I don't know exactly how you describe it, which is why we call it a retro pixel shooter. It's kind of like like carnival target games, basically. So it's really simple in execution. This was basically supposed to be a finding out how the process works, as much as producing a fun little game to see if we could do it. And ultimately we did. It hasn't launched yet, but the game itself seems to be working fine. It's somewhat short, but it's enjoyable. We're going to offer some free expansions in the future as soon as I find the time to work on those. But yeah, so this is another avenue of, hey, I like video games. There's not really a whole lot of, I guess you'd say South-friendly video games. Let's try and do something fun with this. And Gun on the Chickahominy is the result of that. Chickahominy comes from,
go ahead.
The river in Virginia. I don't know why I knew the river name, but it was supposed to be situated on a river because of the game mechanics, which we had to drastically scale back because it was just not feasible with, what we were attempting within the time frame. But we wanted to put it on a river, and then Chickahominy, has a nice rhythm to it.
Yeah.
So pick that.
Well, I'm from Richmond, so I've heard of the Chickahominy, so I know all about it.
Yeah. The big part of the 7 days battle. But yeah, so that's basically what we're doing. We're gonna try and plan more, more expansions to that, and then actually in future, now that we've kind of ironed out the kinks of how to go about doing this, wanted to do a strategy game about Stonewall Jackson in the Shenandoah Valley, or in the Shenandoah Valley. Probably a little too ambitious, but man, that would be fun. We'd call it Jackson in the Valley, and it would also be like a retro style pixel game. But I think that could be really good if we put the time necessary into it.
That sounds awesome.
If you want to get a surprisingly pro-South video game, which is on Steam, which is, I don't know, do you play video games? You don't strike me as a video game player.
No, Atari, Space Invaders back in the 80s, but my kids and husband do. So they were asking, is it a PC game?
Yeah, it'll be PC,
Okay.
so on Steam, and then it's going to be released on Android as well. I think the
Oh,
Android
okay.
version is going to be free, but it will have ads.
Okay.
So, but if you want to get another game, it's by Tilted Mill.
Okay.
It is called Mosby's Confederacy. It was
Ooh.
it was done, I forget, like 2002 or something, but it is about John Singleton Mosby. Well,
The
Mosby,
Gray
Mosby.
Ghost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is like a top-down action, action RPG type game, but you play as Mosby. It is that this studio, who had great success in other video games, I think they did. What was that? It was an empire building game in the '90s, set in Egypt. It was like called Cleopatra something, Pharaoh or Cleopatra. But
My
they went
husband
on
would know.
a successful video game studio, and then they decide to make a game about John Singleton Mosby, which is just awesome. I think that's just so cool, and it's still on Steam. So yeah, if I'm saying recommending Pro South video games, it would be that
Okay.
Mosby's Confederacy. Also, I would recommend what is it, Ultimate General Gettysburg, which is good. Yeah, so yeah, there are a few, Pro South, or at least historically accurate and not biased video games out there. But
Now, is it true that the battle flag can still be in video games? You know how, if you're playing a World War II game, Germany has to have
yeah,
the Iron Cross or whatever. I mean, but
yeah,
that
well,
hasn't happened yet to Civil War games, has it? To where it's,
no,
the Bonnie Blue flag or the flag of surrender, I guess is what it would be. And by
yeah,
modern standards, it would be the white flag.
yeah. The first, I think there was a modern game which came out. I forget the name. Released this year, last year, but they did have the first national rather than the Confederate battle flag.
Okay.
But no, there are still all of the games which I played, which feature the Confederate flag, still have the Confederate flag. So,
Okay.
so yeah, whether or not they're going to attack that in future,
Yeah.
I would be surprised if they did not. Um,
So it's like it's fine in video games, but in a comic book, stop the press,
Well, we thought about crowdfunding Gun on the Chickahominy on Indiegogo, but
Yeah.
we knew where that was going, so we didn't even try. But so yeah, can I make some plugs for comics if we got a few?
Yeah, I was gonna say, what have we not talked about that you want to talk about, and we'll wrap this up because I know it's getting late.
In modern comics, modern comics are kind of a cesspool for the most part, and they've been trending that way for a while. But there are some great creators out there producing some awesome stuff. John De La Rose,
Okay.
he's produced just a score of cool comics. So you have Clockwork Dancer, you have Cosmic Warrior, which is another one he's done. What's another one? Oh, Flying Sparks. Flying Sparks, if you have kids, I would recommend it for a teenager. Would not recommend it for like a young kid.
Okay.
There's a little violence involved. But yeah, those are, like the old 1960s Marvel comics. They're just fun, like the early Stanley stuff. It is a hoot. Also, Vox Day and Alt Hero and all that. He just released ArcHaven.com, ArcHaven Comics, which it's basically like webtoons, but with comics, his comics and other creators' comics.
Okay.
So, yeah, we actually approached him about putting Rebel Yell on there. He hasn't responded. He probably won't agree. Hopefully he will. He probably won't. I don't know if the quality is up to snuff, but yeah, they've got some great content on there. I would definitely go and check that out. It's free. So, they update it episodically once a week, depending on the comic. But they got a lot of cool stuff on there. So, Alt Hero and all that. Other people, Doug TeNaple, who does Earthworm Jim.
Okay.
So he's another comic creator. His stuff is a hoot and really good guy. Highly recommend him if you want, some fun slapstick, really slapsticky, goofy comic books. So yeah, those would be my comic recommendations. Not that I'm an authority, but those are the things that I find interesting and, have definitely been, on my read list.
Well, I think that the suggestions are much needed because Oh my gosh. Sorry. Did you just hear my dog? She's right outside the door. She sounded like a bear. Anyway, um, you know, my husband, again, he's kind of like stepped back from it, but he still enjoys the genre. So, I mean, I think the more suggestions, the better, because I thought it was like you and, Alt Hero. I didn't even know there was like other stuff out there. So that's awesome. And I think that also you doing that, I think speaks so much to the fact that we need to stick together. People who are non-leftists need to help each other out and throw each other a bone. And I think that that needs to happen way more often. So I hope Vox Day listens to this interview and picks up your stuff, because that would be awesome.
Could I throw out one more person I forgot?
Please.
This would be I would recommend this, to teenagers and up. It is called Napalm Brothers. So it's about Vietnam veterans returning from the war, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. It is different though. If you want a comic which is visually very appealing, very different, I would recommend that. Interested to see where the plot goes, but yeah, Napalm Brothers.
All right. Well, Ryan Randall, aka Electric Dinosaur, it has been a pleasure. If you ever want to, collaborate on anything, or, hang out again and talk about, hopefully not episode. Is that what they're called? Episodes, the new books? Issues. Sorry.
Issues. Yeah, issues.
Issue 4, 5, 6, 100, because I pray that big things are going to happen for you. Please keep me in your purview, and do not hesitate to reach out, because loyalty is very important these days. And I just thank you for coming on the show, and consider you a compatriot, and wish you all the best.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And your podcast is a lot of fun. I was listening while I was on the road to the interview you had with Dr. Devaney, and that was a hoot. So
yeah, well, it's fun talking to smart people. You just ask them questions, and they just sound super smart. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So you are one of those smart people. I love meeting people, and I think this has been a great interview. And maybe next time we'll get some video. We'll see.
Yeah, I'll try and have a mask ready. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Dude, make Rebel Yell masks, and then you can market them. And I think that would be super neat. And, we live in a masked world. Why not embrace it, right?
Yeah, they're going to come up and tell you to take the mask off. I mean,
yeah, you can't do that. All right, sir. Well, you have a great night, and I'll be seeing you around.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye.